Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and watching this interview with the famous Mary Kubica, an author that we know and love very much for her psychological thrillers. She's written quite a few, and we're going to hear all about that today, as well as a host of other things about her, getting the nitty-gritty. I will just read her biography here for those of you who aren't in the know. Mary is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of 5 novels, including The Good Girl, Pretty Baby, Don't You Cry, Every Last Lie, and When the Lights Go Out. Her new book coming out in February is The Other Misses. She is a former high school history teacher and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, in history and American literature. She currently lives outside of Chicago with her husband and 2 children. Her first novel, The Good Girl, was an indie Next pick in August of 2014 and received a Strand Critics nomination for Best First Novel and was a nominee in the Goodreads Choice Awards in Debut Goodreads Author and in Mystery and Thriller for 2014. Mary's novels have been translated into over 30 languages and have sold over 2 million copies worldwide. So we are very, very thrilled to have you with us today. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time. I will let you just dive right in and maybe just introduce yourself and a little bit about your how you became a novelist.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here chatting with you today. I was just one of those kids who loved to read. When I was probably like 11 or 12 years old was when I first started writing for the first time. And I had been at a sleepover with a cousin of mine, and she wrote this story that she shared with me. And I was hooked instantly on the idea of, writing and creating these characters and these worlds. And so from the time I was, 11 or 12, I've always been writing. But I was always very shy about my writing. It was something that was very personal to me and not something that I ever saw myself like putting out there and sharing with the world. Even, as a girl, I was reluctant to share my work with, parents or friends or teachers. So again, it was just something that I kept very much to myself. But I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So professionally, I went that route, and I was a high school history teacher. But then when my daughter was born, that was back in 2005, I started working on what was to become my first book, The Good Girl. And it took me 5 years to write. But when I finished it, it was the first thing that I had written that I thought, I wanted to share it with somebody. Like, I don't know if just it was the time in my life, or there was something about that book that I felt finally ready to share with the world. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I started sending it off to agents. It did take a couple of years for me to find an agent, 2 years after many, many rejections. But then a couple months later, after I found the agent, she was sending it off to publishers, and I was fortunate enough to get a book deal out of it. So it's been kind of whirlwind few years since then, but it's been a blast, and it's just such a joy to be able to take something I was so passionate about since I was a little girl and have a career with it.
Well, that's very exciting, and obviously the dream of most authors. Are you working full time as an author now?
I am, yeah. So it's great. I mean, it's really amazing to be able to do this full time, and I know that it's not always the case for authors, but to just be able to spend the bulk of my day writing, it feels like a dream come true many days.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you miss the classroom?
I do. I do. I get into schools though when I can. Just this past week, I was able to speak at one of the Chicago public schools. They have a creative writing club, and some of the members had reached out to me, and I was able to come in. It was for the creative writing club, but then any students that were interested in listening could just come. And so I was able to speak to them for a class period about writing, and it was just amazing. These kids are so intelligent and creative these days, and I just love being able to get in the classroom in any capacity and work with the kids.
That's awesome. So the book that we're promoting with the Girly Book Club is The Other Misses, and this is actually a paperback copy, but it's because it's an advance copy. But it will come out in hardcover in February. So I don't want to delve too much into the book because unfortunately it would spoil the experience for the readers, but I have finished this book. It is amazing. It keeps you completely edge of your seat till the very, very last page. So I recommend everybody grab a copy of this. Can you speak about your experience writing other books and maybe even the genre that you, I think all of your books are in the same genre.
They are, yeah. And a lot of people ask me, what drew me to that psychological suspense. And I usually say that the genre chose me instead of the other way around. Anything that I had written before The Good Girl, unpublished, but it was more just like general women's fiction, I would say. It didn't have the twists and turns in there. And when I started writing The Good Girl, it was not a conscious decision. I just little by little started to weave some of those details and those elements of mystery into the novel. And I don't think I really was aware that I was doing it, but all of a sudden I had this just excitement about the book. Anything I wrote before The Good Girl, I would think I had a great idea, and I'd get 50 pages in, and I wasn't sure where the story was going to go, and I'd lose interest, and I'd set it aside and, jump into what I thought was the next big idea. And it just went on and on like this until The Good Girl. And as soon as those mystery elements started working their way in, and, I was thinking about a big twist and just all those different, the unreliable narrator and all those things that are really so important in domestic suspense these days, it just kind of worked into the novel. And I just knew that I had found my niche there. So yeah, all my books are in that domestic suspense, psychological suspense, genre, whatever you want to call it. And I love it. I'm not a plotter, so I think that surprises a lot of people that I don't know exactly how this book is going to unfold as I'm writing it for any of my books. So I usually just start with some sort of problem and, dive in. I did know many parts of the ending for The Other Misses, but I didn't have it all figured out. Some of that just develops throughout the process of writing.
So then your ideas, where do they come from? You're just writing and they manifest themselves?
They do, for the most part. With one of my novels, Every Last Lie, I had read a newspaper heading that spoke to me and really inspired that book. But with the others, it's my imagination, and they all start as like a tiny idea. They're definitely not fully fleshed out. It's just a starting point, and then from there, I slowly begin to build a bigger plot and add different mysteries to that. That kind of instigating problem, and develop the characters and sort of develop their backstory, what's brought them to this point of the story. And so little by little, that whole book begins to take shape. But yeah, it's usually just some little idea that comes to me. And it takes a while to know, like, does this idea have legs or not? Is it going to get me through 90 or 100,000 words? Sometimes I have to get in there and see. But yeah.
In Britain, you referred to being, you're not a plotter, and they say pantser or plotter. Whether you go by the seat of your pants or you plot it, the whole thing. But having read your book, it's amazing to me that you didn't have it all set out to start with. Do you have to go back then after you have written most of it to kind of adjust?
I do. I absolutely do. Because something will come to me 50 or 75% of the way into the novel, and everything that came before it may not be in line with that twist, or so I do have to go back and revise some things, but I don't mind. There's something about just that spontaneity of developing these characters and seeing where they lead me that I love. It keeps the excitement there. I know that there are many authors that will write a 30 or 50 page outline before they even begin, and they have it all worked out. And I'm guessing that they hit fewer snags during the writing process than I do. But on the other hand, there's just something so organic and it's spontaneous that I love. As a writer, when I get to that moment where I think of the twist or how these different storylines are going to finally come together, I have that aha moment, and I get so excited. I hope that it's similar to when the reader kind of figures out that twist and they have that aha moment. So it keeps me very excited to write.
Well, I literally, I think 30 pages at the end, I had no idea what was going on. So you certainly did it in The Other Misses.
Yeah, thank you.
My next question is still about genres. Do you see, as you become more established and you sell more copies and you get more awards, you have a little bit more flexibility as an author. Do you see yourself exploring other genres, or is this your comfort zone? You do it well and you're just going to stay there?
This is definitely my comfort zone, and even as a reader, it's the genre that I'm drawn to. So I love it. That said, I do have a history background as a former high school history teacher. So sometimes I think historical fiction with some sort of mystery built in. I haven't thought too much about it. I don't know what era I'd like to write in, but it's one of those things that's sort of on the bucket list that one day I would like to try. I also love to read YA books, young adult, and so that is another one that I've considered, YA with the mystery and thriller elements into it. So one day maybe.
Okay, so my next question is really about timelines. And since 2014, you have published one book a year, pretty much. Is that like a hard time, or is it an uphill battle, or?
Yeah, it's busy to be sure. And there are moments that I think, oh my God, can't do this. I'm not gonna meet my deadline or that kind of thing. But I do. I'm a pretty fast writer. I think I'm pretty focused. I get up early every morning. I write for the bulk of the day, but I think that my best writing always happens in those morning hours. And many days, I'm able to reach my word count by like 7 or 8 a.m. So I don't know. I love writing so much that it's easier to attain those goals, I think, because it's something that I look forward to doing. But that year does go by quickly, and it's not just a year of writing, but it's the writing plus the editing process, plus in there I'm probably promoting some other books, so I'm on the road for some period of time. So it goes fast. In 2019, this year, was the first year I did not have a book out, and it is because the other misses, it needed a little more work, and it would have been a 2019 book, but just when it got to the ends of the writing and the editing stage, it was all kind of coming together quickly, and so we thought, let's just slow down a little bit. We can push it off to 2020, early 2020, and just make sure this book is as good as it can possibly be. So when I need to slow down, or for whatever reason, there's time. So I know that too, which is a
comfort. That's interesting, because whatever you did, it worked. Does it get easier? And it sounds like maybe it doesn't.
Every book is like its own thing. So it isn't necessarily that I get better or each book gets easier. Some books are easy. Some books, I shouldn't say easy. That's not the right word, but some books come easier and some books are just a constant challenge. And I don't know what it is. I think in part it's like how well do I understand these characters? Because sometimes I feel like I know these characters so well that I know how the story is going to unfold. I can see inside their heads, and it comes to me that these characters speak to me, and it sort of comes out more clearly. And then there are ones where it's just an uphill battle. Like I can't get to know that character or their motivations, and so I have a little bit more trouble moving forward. So, but it seems to be like in every other pattern for me. I don't know, like one is crazy difficult and one is easier, and it goes back and forth like that. So, yeah, I don't know. And talking to so many other authors, I feel like it's not just me. It's the same with so many authors. I can't tell you how many authors will be starting like their 5th or their 10th book, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't remember how to do this. Can I do another book? And so writing can be a mind game sometimes. Sometimes the biggest challenge is just dealing with the voices in your head that, are maybe telling you can't do it.
Do you have a favorite book out of the ones you've written?
It's hard to choose based on the book itself, but I usually do say The Good Girl. And it's not so much the book itself, but more the experience of writing it. It was the only book that I wrote that I wasn't on a deadline. It was the only book that I wrote that, I didn't know if it would be published. With all the other books, they were under contract before I started writing them. And with The Good Girl was my first published book. So it was, there was so much hope kind of hinging on that book. I also wrote it. I started writing it like months, weeks after my daughter was born. So I feel like so much of the process goes hand in hand with my kids' early childhood, just my daughter napping and me trying to write, or having an infant on my lap and I'm typing with the other hand on the computer. So it's more the experience of writing it versus the book itself.
Which leads nicely to, what is your favorite part about being an author? Is it the signings? Is it the touring? Is it the actual just day-to-day writing?
Yeah, there's so many good parts. I love the writing, especially on good writing days. You know, there are days that the words just flow, that I don't want to put the computer away, you know, at the end of it, even though I know kids are coming home from school and I need to pack it up and be done. So it's exhilarating sometimes depending on how the writing is going. But, you know, meeting readers or connecting with readers on social media is just amazing too. Or I'll get emails from readers sometimes that'll say, you know, I was going through this really, really hard time in my life, and I read one of your books, and it's like, it's the only thing that got me through this time. And it blows my mind, you know, that like my words could have that effect on anybody. So it means so much when I have that connection with the reader, you know, and get their take on it, or, you know, they fell in love with a character, or they were just really moved by something that happens in one of my books. Or even with this one, with The Other Misses, I'm getting a lot of people that were really, really scared. And I love that, you know, it just comes full circle, because of course that's the emotion I'm hoping to evoke, and this one in particular. And so it's hear from a reader that it worked. I did it. That's so fulfilling.
That's funny because when I don't get scared, but when I was reading this book, like I almost couldn't read it at night because and I would like listen in my house when I was reading late at night, and like I have a son as well, so I was like listening and like listening for him and making sure he was okay. And does that ever affect you the same
You
way?
know, I think for me, because the process of writing is so much slower than a reader would read, you know, so a scene might take me 3 or 4 days to write, depending on the scene. And so much of it is like the nitty gritty details, like word choice and things like that, that it sort of gets watered down for me. Sometimes after I finish writing the book, I'll set it aside, or like maybe my editor has it for a month or two and I'm not looking at it. And then when I come back and kind of read it with fresh eyes, then I have that experience that hopefully a reader would have.
It's so interesting though that like where these ideas come from. Like you think of someone like Gillian Flynn, and like there's such darkness, but I mean, clearly you're a very bright and and lovely lady, but you have such an imagination. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I would like to know more about who inspires you as an author and what your favorite books are.
Yeah, I read a lot in the same genre. So I'm a huge Gillian McMillan, Megan Abbott, J.T. Ellison, Heather Gudenkauf. I could go on and on. I'm a huge fan of many of the mystery, psychological suspense authors that are out there right now. I think that S.J. Watson's Before I Go to Sleep is the book that just like raised the bar in the genre for me. That book is just so intelligent and so well done. It's the one, you know, that as a writer, I'm like, ooh, I wish I would have thought of that. So I think to me that's kind of the top of the bar, you know, one to strive for. But I'm always, every time I read, I think that I'm always really paying attention to, you know, how authors do their characters or dialogue, or kind of what tricks they're working into the book. And so I'm always learning, hopefully, and improving and developing as an author just from reading all these other books.
And in the same vein, what, in your opinion, makes for a good psychological thriller? Like, what are the important components?
Yeah, for me, it's both a mix of character and plot. I mean, I think for the genre, you want to just be flipping through those pages. You know, you want a book that as a reader, you cannot put down and you just can't get away from it. So plot is huge, but I think that character it means everything. If I don't have some sort of connection to the characters in the books that I'm reading, I don't care as much what happens to them. Like, I'm not as invested in their story. And so I think that's one thing that I really look for in a psychological thriller. I know that in the genre, there are a lot of characters that can be easy to hate. You know, they make some terrible choices, and that's fine. You know, I just feel like they have to be really plausible to me, and there has to be some character in that book that I feel really drawn to. And maybe I wouldn't agree with the choices that they're making, but it seems, there needs to be some basis as to why they're making these choices. Just because, like I said before, if I have that connection with them, I can kind of see where they're coming from and where the story is going. I'm so much more invested in that story, and I care so much more about how the book will end.
Okay. Can you, I did want to ask you specific questions about the book, but I'm really afraid to give it away. But can you maybe just give everybody who's listening a little bit of a synopsis on why this should be their next read?
Yeah. So the other misses, it's about a Chicago family. It's Sadie and Will. That's the mom and dad, and then they have two sons, Otto and Tate. And they inherit a home on an island off the coast of Maine when Will's sister dies. And they've had just like a lot of bad things have happened to them in Chicago. And it's a really good time for them to just leave Chicago behind and make a fresh start in Maine. So they go to this home, which is on a kind of abandoned, not abandoned, but it's pretty vacant island. It has a lot of summer homes, but the book is set in late fall, early winter. So all the summer folks have left the islands and gone back to their permanent homes. And so there's only a small group of people that remain, and they're not that welcoming to Will and Sadie and their family. But add to that they've also inherited Will's niece, who is like a very sullen 16-year-old girl, and she does not welcome them with open arms. And then shortly after their arrival, a woman across the street winds up murdered. And so all eyes kind of look suspiciously to the new arrivals to their island. And, Sadie realizes that the only way to kind of, protect her own family is to figure out who killed this woman, Morgan Baines, herself. So it's, I think that hopefully it is a little spooky. I think that the setting kind of adds to the creepiness. They're on this secluded island. The only way to access the mainland is by ferry, but with the weather as it is, there's kind of questions about whether or not they'll be able to get off the island if they need to in really inclement weather. I hope everybody will pick it up.
It's certainly worth it. And I can't even say anything because I'm afraid. I wanted to say something about the daughter that they inherit. Anyways, now just a couple kind of quick fire round questions, more just to get to know you a little bit better, Mary. So if you're not writing, what is it that you might be doing?
I'm one of two things. I volunteer at an animal shelter, so I'm either there or I'm training for a marathon right now, so I could be running.
Wow, good for you. Have you ever run a marathon before?
I've done a couple half marathons, but this will be my first full marathon.
Goodness me, when is it?
It's not till next October, so I've got like 10 months to get ready.
Oh, that's awesome. I ran a half as well, and I thought at the end of that, there's no way I could ever do a full.
I have, my only goal literally is to like not be disqualified. You know how you have to maintain a certain pace? Just don't be disqualified.
If you could choose one bookstore in the whole world, which one would be your favorite?
I'm going to go with Anderson's Bookshop, which is my local indie here in the suburbs of Chicago.
We love independent bookshops. They're so wonderful.
They're wonderful.
Physical book, ebook, or audiobook, and why?
Ooh, it's an easy one for me. It's a physical book. Although I will do audio, but there is nothing better than just holding a book in my hands, seeing my bookmark in there, being able to smell it, or just even to easily be able to flip back. Like if something happens and I have a question and I just want to flip back, a physical book is the way to go for me.
Do you recall what your favorite book as a child was?
The Eyes of the Amaryllis by Natalie Babbitt.
And how old were you when what age group is that?
I want to say I was like third grade. I remember that a teacher read it aloud to us in school. So I want to third, fourth grade, something like that.
Okay. If you watch TV, is there a podcast? Or if you don't watch TV, a podcast, is there a Netflix? Are you binge watching anything, or are you listening to a podcast religiously?
So The Killing this is just like my favorite of all time TV show, but The Killing, it's been a couple of years since I watched it. I'm not a huge TV person lately just because I'm busy. But The Killing is the one TV show that I tell everybody they must watch. Big Little Lies is another one of my favorites.
I have seen both of them, and I agree. Okay, and then our last question is, if we're on the hunt for our next best to read book, what would you recommend, other than, of course, The Other Misses?
Yeah. Okay. So this one, I don't think it comes out till April, but I just finished Jennifer Hillier's, I think that's how you say it, Little Secrets, and it's just amazing. I would highly, highly recommend it. You have to wait a little bit, but it's just so incredibly good. I flew through that book literally in one sitting, which is something I don't often do, but I could not put that one down. It's phenomenal.
And is it psychological thriller?
It is, yes. It starts with an abduction of a little boy, but then it turns into something like so much darker, more twisted, and it's so good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for your time today, Mary.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.